Yeah. So I'm still at Pi School. Like my soul is in that company. I had the privilege. There is some person here. Isabel, where are you? So do you see that beautiful woman up there? Can you, for a second, stand up? So this lady is saving my life. She was so generous. Thank you. She was so generous to take over the CEO role of Pi School. So I'm having this chance of being there still as an advisor and be in that family and start focusing on my next step. I'm like kind of like I don't know, I'm like bubbling. I can't stay in one place too long. Beautiful things. I have to comment on a couple of things you guys heard. As an educator, I would have actually said, fuck, how do you listen to this for 30 minutes and you expect of any of yourselves to then just continue to listen to whatever bullshit I will tell you right now? You actually should now go into groups of 10 for 20 minutes, evaluate it, debate it, come back, reflect on it, talk, and then after lunch, we can do the next session. So this is what happens when I do my incubators. So what is it? Who of you, if your mom and dad told you, who of you ended up in such machine after you were born? Oh, there were a few of you, you see? So all of those of you who had the hands up, if you were a baby lion, you would have been fucked. Because the nature would have said, sorry, you're not ready born, go and die. That's how nature works. We started to trick it right from the beginning. So we incubate our companies. Like, I knew that this device is called an incubation device, but my personal brain was always occupied with the word incubator related to a startup, company, accelerator, all of that. But then as I started to think about, so what if we use creativity to incubate something, it started to become much better concept because nature is always the best incubator. So I went to the incubated by nature. Like that big machine with all the energy it uses and every trick it does to save those 5 or 6 hands. One of them was one of my students, right? Did I see that right? My God. You wouldn't have been in the class. You know, so this is the perfect incubator, that little belly, and does so much more. So I thought, okay, let's have this creative incubator as something which is not about us doing something to those audience, but that participants to make everything happen. So I'm going to give you the setting. Oh, I have to make sure I have 7 minutes, and then I want 2 of my best of the best 20, 30 people in each class come and tell you about the content happening there. So let me just give you the setting. I have to control myself. I'm forgetting myself. So that was the mission. That was not the mission. It was more. Under here, which is black, it says, not the planet. So I agree with a couple of people, and I disagree with a couple of people I heard today. Planet doesn't fucking need us. Planet is like a dog, and we are just a little bug on the skin. And if it is tired of us, it does like, and we are gone. So yes, we have to take responsibility and say, we fucked up the planet. And now, just like when you run out of milk and you then think, I have to go and buy milk, or when you have headache and you say, now is the time to take the pill. So we have come so far that we think like, oh my God, maybe tomorrow we can't live on this planet anymore because we are damaging it. So let's do something to save ourselves. Having said that, I still love what we do to save the planet. And I love the activism around it. Yet, let's be fair and don't pretend we are saving the planet. It's gonna stay here after we are gone. But let's say, let's be responsible and do less damage. That's already good enough. And let's be in that position of saying, all of us who already fucked it up and can't heal it again, let's hand over the key to those who can do it and are going to live on it. So this is the basic concept of creative incubator. And for that, I was trying to get a kitchen together. I always say a program is like a food process. You need a kitchen, you need cooks, you need guests who come and eat, you need a restaurant. These guys, Julia, Con, Filippo, Ray, Louis, Axel, these are like all super creative people. Most of them started like Julia was a CEO, ended up having her own company called Soulworks, focusing on humanity. JWT, creative director, South Africa, brain cancer, ended up having the foundation to use creativity to help cancer, people in cancer. So all of them come from super backgrounds, and I was privileged to bring them together as magicians, as shamans, as cooks. So we started to have the soup being put together. Beautiful restaurants, 3 places. We went to this magnificent villa you have to see in Rome, the Pie School. This is like source of inspiration. And Barcelona here, it's really fun to work in this environment. If you haven't worked inside this building, it's like super inspiring. And then Berlin, I'm coming from Berlin, so it's always good to go back home. And Mercer had the connections to beautiful people who made everything financially possible, because the whole creative incubator is actually not a money-making machine. We are doing it because we love it, we believe in it. Everyone who is involved is actually putting time and money in it, including the participants. 70 of them from 20 countries. And we had like kind of 400 people applying for it and selecting the top 20 matching. I still have 3 minutes, it's great. But 2 minutes of it is for the video. So, connecting to the topic of this day, I don't know if I can talk about people for tomorrow. So I'm talking about creatives of today, because it's us and today, and everything you do matters right now. Tomorrow I might die. So I'm not speculating to plan for tomorrow. Every second should count. Every minute, every action should count. That's the awareness. It's like those silly things. Are you brushing your teeth and let the water run or not? It's like, okay, ask this question to yourself right now. And those of you who say, like, ugh, so are you showering and like washing your head and it's running? Simple things. And not for the sake of let's save the planet, but for the sake of this is logical, this is human, this is natural. Because the nature takes only what it needs. And that's why it works without us much better than us actually ruling and overruling it. So coming from that background, I say it's a creativity of today, but creativity for tomorrow, the technology, the society, politics, all of that, these are all much faster than we can handle it. So the only thing which makes me being able to kind of control it, align with it, direct it, filter it, is creativity. It's so natural and it's so in us, and I'm excluding the craft. I'm so excluding the craft that suddenly everyone is creative and purely creative by heart, by reality. It's a part of our nature. Is like we have technology since a couple of hundred years or a couple of thousand, including the simple tools, but creativity is there like kind of, I don't know how many million or whatever, 100,000 of years people exist, like human exists. Creativity was there day one. So it's a part of us, and it could be the perfect police to make sure that we don't do things wrong. That's where I come from. So let me show you a very short video of what happened during our incubation. And then I hand over to 2 of these like superstars telling you what they did. So you said I need to click slowly and only once and da-da-da. So nice. I wish you were here. So this was the outcome. We're going to be publishing it in 2 weeks' time. You're going to find that on ADCE Europe website, as well as on the PySchool website. You can already go, at least on the PySchool, I know you can go there and put your email address there, and then as soon as it's published and it's out, they're going to automatically send it to you. We might be able to manage that at the ADCE as well. It's going to be the content we kind of gathered within the last 9 months, all the studies, examples. Many people wrote in it, like participants integrated. The reason I'm 2 weeks late to produce it is because so many people started to add in most valuable information in it. And it's going to inspire you, I'm sure. Last year's white paper made 4 new companies being generated by the people who were in there and people who weren't there. So it's doing something. We do small things, but we do things. That matters to me. So allow me to introduce Sigrid and Ossi to you. Please welcome join welcome them. I'm leaving this stage. I'm not looking at you. You're not participants. I'm not the teacher. And I want you to be like kind of as you are, who you are. I love you. Enjoy the rest of the 20 minutes.
Thanks, Jam. So, you have the...
How can I? Yes, of course.
Thanks.
Yes.
I don't want you to lead the show. What is it like to take part in a creative incubator? Pretty much feels like this. You attend 2.5 days at a time, and at the end you're completely exhausted. But it's a fun process. It's a process, even though it doesn't feel like one. But yeah, how did you feel when you first entered the
room? So the expectations. At first, like, I really didn't have any solid expectations. I kind of just wanted to get something new I could apply to my work, meet some inspiring people, and something happened that I didn't really even know I could expect was actually being influenced also in a very personal level, not only being inspired to do or see my work differently. And what about you?
Well, I was Jam is a tricky person in the sense that he doesn't let you know what he's going to do. So the descriptions of the whole modules are pretty vague, and I was expecting to participate in creative workshops, creative lectures, and that sort of stuff. It was that, but it wasn't. So. I mean, it was a very sharp cut into the world of chaos, so to say. It was like we immediately leave the comfort zone when you get into a creative incubator. It's a very stark contrast to the regular working process. It requires a lot of presence.
Yeah, you would sit there and listen to an amazing lecture, and really, I wanted to be like a sponge, really listen every word, take it in, analyze it, and then as soon as you're in this comfort state, you will be immediately thrown into cold water and put into teams and given a very like provocative questions and tasks to us, which you think you might have very clear answers, like, I don't know, what are the attributes for creativity, which kind of seems like a very familiar topic, but once you start to discuss and elaborate on the topic, you would end up with so many definitions, and if some definition kind of applies to one situations, it can be outruled in others.
And you're taken outside of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. This is Louis. He's an amazing person. He always talks about liminal states and liminal beings. And liminal state is a state that is sort of in between things. This sort of sums up quite well the whole process of attending a creative incubator. You're not there. You're not in any other place. But it's a transition. It's a process. And you were talking about shamans. I consider every tutor or mentor who runs the creative incubator a liminal being, who is a creature who like facilitates change, and they transfer you from one place to the other. They keep you on your toes all the time, and it's a state that we as creatives face more and more. So we have to be able to be comfortable with that. And there are people who are comfortable with the uncertainty of the situation, and then there are people who aren't. And this was all about, like, it's 2.5 days of very uncomfortable, like, states, but in a good way.
Yeah, I guess the uncomfortable part really comes from, I think, in the creative industry, we are really used to that. If we are presenting our work to clients, we kind of are used to being in control of the idea that we're presenting. But in this kinds of environments, you really had to let go of the control and embrace the chaos, in that sense that you didn't have to produce a result. It was rather more important to have a discussion.
Yeah, and I mean, after the first module last year, I attended Barcelona. I was constantly thinking, like, where is this going? But you quite fast realize that you don't even want to spend time on thinking that. There is a process, but you're not going to see it until the end. So it's just like throw yourself at the process, see what comes out, try and enjoy the ride, because you're not going to get off. There's I promised Daniele that I'm going to put a huge picture of him on top. So yeah, it's a team effort. We work with, how many participants are in each module?
25 to 30.
Yeah, so 25 to 30 people. Some of them participate in several modules, so there's continuity between the modules, but then there's always an injection of fresh talent. And that generates a very interesting mechanic. Mm-hmm. And the mentors are constantly teaming people together and adjusting the teams based on dynamics. And then it's like they sort of keep up that liminal state where I don't know how they do it, but it generates very interesting results. And at the end, you have a solution to a problem that you didn't know that existed even. So.
Yeah, and as soon as you kind of feel comfortable with some kind of idea, you would have the provocateurs who would try to influence you, or like try to get some validations how sure of you are of yourself. And sometimes you're pretty sure, and then the other times you're completely, like, your idea is demolished and you start over again. So, and actually, when we were talking about the results, then our team worked on animalizing creativity.
Take that?
Yep.
The white button?
Yep, nope. And this topic came from actually a provocation. Like, there was a definition of creativity that popped up a lot during this modules was that creativity is very kind of a human quality, a key human quality. And then one of our mentors said, but what would happen if we tried dehumanize it? So our team, we started to compare ourselves with animals. And as there is clear that we share some similarities, like we have the need for survival and we have instincts, we wanted to know how much do we share when it comes to creativity as well. And we looked at some of the examples of creative animals, and we saw that they're very focused on what they're doing with their creativity. So for example, they are trying to attract mates, they want to build a home, they're using it for social hierarchy, protection, hunting, food gathering. And if we look into a very specific example, you get this blue bowerbird. And during the season of mating, the male bowerbird there would build these elaborate bowers. And if you think he would build this among this random rubbish, just randomly, then no, actually how it works is the more blue decorations you have around the bower, the more popular you are on bird Tinder. And this is a good example how animal creativity is very focused in one activity and is shaped by their senses. And on the example of the bowerbird, it's shaped by the sense how they create visual stimuli for their partners. And this kind of made us think that if our creativity is shaped by our senses, what our creativity could look like if we had different senses. So we looked into other examples from the nature, and we found the octopus pretty interesting. And it has amazing skill of seeing color. But if you think about it or talk about it in a very, very simple way, if you talk about it in a very, very simple way, then they actually feel color with their skin, which can polarize light. And we tried to think about what this kind of skill can enable us to do. And just a few examples we got was like this polarization. How could we use it in a problem if we had this sense? And a really like shallow maybe example would be in the makeup industry. Could you imagine doing your makeup if you can already see it act in different lights? Or how can we maybe cure color blindness if we can polarize colors? Or we can go differently, in a different way when you talk about communication, because thanks to this polarization of light, octopuses can change the color of their skin. And if we could possess these kinds of sense, could we have a different kind of new language based on detecting each other's emotions? Or could we express ourselves also differently? And if we try to make this into our approach, then it looks something like this. You would pick an animal, you would see what is this creative sense that they're focused at. We would maybe look into then what could this sense enable us to create and find problems that we can apply to. And based on the octopus example, we chose its skill of polarization. Polarization and seeing the colors one at a time, and maybe we could find a solution, we can fix color blindness with it. With this very simple approach, I think this can illustrate how the definition of creativity can be shaped by the environment that it exists in, and how we can be inspired by looking into different environments.
Thank you. Our group had a revelation about how to visualize and make creativity into like the amount of creativity and the application of creativity into something understandable. So we call it the creative string theory. It has nothing to do with physics, but actual strings. So this is how you solve a problem. You have a problem and you have a solution. And the problem is that we tend to conserve energy as much as possible, which means that we always go for the most obvious answer. So A to B, direct lines. The problem is that things rarely move in direct lines unless you drop something. We started thinking of creativity as a piece of string. Everyone has a piece of string, and you can sort of like, if you take one end and you rotate it, you can sort of like map out the area in which you can solve problems. Some people have more string, so you have more area to cover. Some people have a little. You can increase the length of your string by practicing creativity and gaining more knowledge and so forth. How it works is that when you have an obstacle, like a big question, if you have enough string, you can cover pretty much any problem and just go beyond it and find the solution. But this is like, if you have a lot of creativity, you can solve big problems. But what about if you have a lot of creativity and you have a little problem? Then the problem is you have a lot of you have a lot of like extra string, and you know what happens with your earphones, they get like all messy and stuff. So that's what happens, and that's not something you want to get done, because that's a very messy process. So how the creative mind works is we build obstacles because it's fun. If you have a very straightforward task, you're going to go, well, this is boring. I'm going to figure out if I can do it with my left hand. If I won't use any colors, let's not use any words. Let's try and make something that no one has ever built. Immediately, it's very difficult, and it's a challenge. So then you can wind the creativity that you have with the click. Oh, there we go. So then you can use all that creativity to solve a problem. So self-imposed problems, self-imposed obstacles. Another thing that we were thinking about was how do you define the goal? The goal rarely is a singular point, and it shouldn't be. So why make it a singular point? Come on, clicker. There. So what about if you set the actual goal to be something fuzzy? It's not actually a point. It's a general area that you want to go into. Then what it lets you do is it lets you sort of use all of that creativity to find a way to some goal and then land on it, which Exhibit C. Now, the problem with this is that, somebody who's usually the guy looking after the money is like, well, I gave you a task of going from A to B, and you used all of this fuzzy creativity to get to C, and it's very inefficient. So why should I pay you for this? Well, the thing is, B is the obvious choice. So that's not creative. The further C is from B, this is the value of the creative solution. If you're really creative, you can be really far away. It needs to be a solution to the problem, otherwise it's not really like solving the problem. But the further away you are, the better it is. But then again, somebody might go, oh, well, you spend all of that time getting to a different solution, so you could have just gone straight, like directly. So we started talking about creative surplus, or like one person framed it, it's creative experience. All of the stuff that happens during the process is not actually waste, but it's something that you can store, you can use later on, you can learn from it. So this is something that we should value. The process itself should generate knowledge to the creatives, and that should be of some value. So some takeaways from this is, if you have a problem, make it a real problem. Make it big, make it difficult. If it's, I want a poster with a banana and it says banana, you might get that, but it's, people might get really creative with that. So if you don't have a real problem, accept the fact that it will be turned into one. So the creative mind will want something to push against, and they will make it into a bigger problem. If you can, make it an open-ended problem. Don't define the solution. Give a general area. I want to go somewhere over there, or art is really good because you don't really have a point that you need to get to, but not all of us work in art, so you need a target. But make it a fuzzy target. Don't specify the solution. And lastly, clickers are, come on, take your time. You can do it. There, oh no, you're spoiling my thing. There we go. So don't be afraid of the creative surplus, but gather it and make use of it. There should be value in that, the process itself. And I think the whole summarization for this and the whole creative incubator is summed up nicely by a quote from Filippo, who was one of the provocateurs during the modules. And he said that a question already holds domination, control, by answering the question, we accept the premise it sets. So you have to challenge the question in itself. Dramatic pause. The question is more important than the actual answer. The process of finding the answer is more important than the answer. And I think that sums up Creative Incubator in a perfect way. Thank you.
Thank you.